Bull, you got to get in on this watermelon. It's delicious.
I would, but I hate spitting out the seeds every few seconds.
But this watermelon doesn't have seeds.
No seeds? How is that possible? You already take them all out?
No, not me. I mean, it came seedless at the grocery store. Someone took them all out through gene editing.
This is good, but maybe next time they can edit out the calories. I'm watching my robot figure.
The mission.
What's going on, y'all? This is Just for Stocks and Giggles, a show where we talk about stocks and have some fun doing it. I'm Bull.
And I'm Bear. We have a great episode for you all today. We will be talking about gene editing, having a little fun, getting a little bit into science today. So let's jump into it and let's talk a little bit about gene editing. So, Bull, where do you want to start with this one today?
I think we should start back, so I think when people hear gene editing, they probably think of some scientists in a lab altering DNA, but I think we should start with how, humans have been doing this for not decades, but thousands and thousands of years, with dogs, with plants, with whatever. Even though it's not, directly changing the DNA, we're choosing, the traits that we want our dogs to have, or that we want our fruits to have, or whatever, and we're breeding them for those specific traits. So I think, in a sense, we've been doing this for a really long time, but now we're obviously able to be more specific in what we're changing.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like gene editing probably came about as a way of efficiency because obviously we started with hunting and gathering and different ways to get food for ourselves. But along the way, we were thinking of, hey, what's more efficient so we don't have to spend as much time out there picking. And gene editing was one way to not only make our, just starting with fruits and vegetables and things like that, make it more efficient to get as much as we want, but also to make it the perfect taste and different variations and all these different things. I mean, you have seedless watermelon now, and that's obviously not how watermelon is naturally grown, but we can edit it to be able to do that.
100%. And what you said, about efficiency, we can have a picture of what wild corn used to look like. It used to be, half the size of your finger or whatever, but now we have corn on the cob that's, the size of your head. And like you said, seedless watermelon, all that. But then, we've been doing it, with plants, but also with animals for forever as well. So, I have a dog and she has all the features and qualities that you'd expect in a dog. She's loyal. She's smart enough. She's whatever. And that's because we took all the wolf out of her and made her into, a little dog that can live in the same house as me,
Yeah, and I mean it's all these. I mean, and dogs is a good topic too because I love dogs personally, but and this may be controversial for the listeners, but I'm not a fan of dog breeding though. Just because I don't know, it just doesn't feel it. I don't know about altering with natural states of things. That's just never really been big for me, and I think part of that is dogs, right? Obviously, dogs start off as wolves, and we breeded them to the point to where they're a totally separate entity, almost a totally separate genetic line at this point.
And what's wild is the variations in dogs themselves. So I have a border collie that's kind of like a normal looking dog, but then you have these small little rat chihuahua dogs, and then you have these massive dogs that are bigger than a wolf. And anyways, I think, long story short, we have been able to get animals and plants to look and act and have the traits that we want, but now we're talking about actually going into their DNA structure and changing this gene for this gene and whatever, which I think is obviously going to be a complete game changer. So maybe we could talk about a few companies in that space and what they're doing and whatnot.
Yeah, because and I definitely want to jump into the companies, but question for you real quick on the dog, because obviously, like you said, you have a dog. I've had a dog at one point. It was when I was younger, I had a Rottweiler mixed with a German Shepherd, and I love the dog. But I think at this point, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I heard that it's no more pure. Like every dog is a mixed breed at this point.
And the dogs that are supposedly purebred, there's all sorts of health problems, and like German shepherds have this issue where their back slants down because they've just been bred to have a certain body shape, but like that leads to, it's inbreeding pretty much. Like it's like, having a kid with your cousin or whatever. Like you're gonna have problems over this. I'm not joking though. Like
Yeah. No,
so
no,
like a
I
lot
mean,
of
you're
these.
right because even like especially I think the smaller dogs have it worse too. Like
Oh
those,
yeah,
even like that American Bulldog, like people love it. It's a great looking dog. Obviously, it's a mascot for some like Georgia Bulldog and stuff like
yeah,
that. But those dogs have a lot of health problems, and a lot of those
yeah.
small dogs do too.
And pugs have like there's this nose problem, they can't breathe right, and a lot of small dogs have a bunch of heart problems and all that. But I guess those are the unintended consequences of what we're doing. Obviously, we didn't want to give dogs health problems. So I think, as we go forward and talk about the actual gene editing, like we definitely have to keep that in mind. Like there's probably going to be unintended consequences.
Yeah, and I mean we talked about animals with dogs, and there's other animals too, and then we talked about food, but and then also with humans, there's companies, and we can jump to the companies too that are doing research on gene editing with
Yeah,
humans, and make getting rid of imperfections in babies and things like that. Companies such as CRISPR Therapeutics and Beam Therapeutics and Atelia Therapeutics. A lot of these companies are in the research stage, but a lot of them are also publicly traded companies that are
yeah.
on their way.
So CRISPR is probably the most famous one, and their big thing is they're working on this therapy for sickle cell disease, which is cool. That mainly affects Black people, so it's cool that they're working on that. And I think, like, how do I put this? This is, them trying to treat, there's people out there who have sickle cell who are, struggling with it and whatever. And this is them saying, hey, we're going to make your life easier because you had this disease. We want to help you fix this, which is a great thing. And Beam is also, it says there, they're also working on severe sickle cell disease. So that's cool that we're working on diseases that people have that they'll have for the rest of their life. And we're trying to solve those things. But then you said something that kind of made me think of, instead of giving this treatment to a full grown adult, we edit a baby in the womb or something. And I think those are two completely separate, ideas or like concepts. Like I'm definitely on board with trying to cure sickle cell, but I don't know if I'm on board with making super babies.
But it's almost like you can't have one without the other because it's like it's all in that kind of universe. It's almost like it's hard to pick and choose. Like, because once you
Right.
open that box into gene editing, everything is you're
It's like, why
editing
wouldn't you just
everything.
make them perfect? Why would you leave any imperfections in their genes?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's even so quick story on since we're like talking about the babies and stuff. There was this one girl who was a product of IVF, and anybody doesn't know who IVF is. I don't know all the scientific terms, but it's ultimately where you're basically building the embryo from outside of the body and
Yeah.
putting it back in, right? And people who have issues having kids, it's pretty common for people to do it. It's expensive, but it's pretty common. But anyway, this girl was a product of IVF, so her parents had her through IVF. And with IVF, you have to have multiple embryos because you're trying. So whichever ones you don't use, they're just frozen somewhere. So anyway, she becomes an adult, and her parents still have the other embryos frozen.
Mm.
So she has an idea to impregnate herself with
What?
one of the embryos to basically make another brother and sister that she would
What?
raise herself, which is crazy, right? But
Wait, so like
but she could do it.
genetically that's her sibling, like, cuz that's her mom's embryo in
Yeah,
or
like
what?
technically it's
What?
her sibling, but it wouldn't come out with any like defects because like she's just the
Right.
carrier, right? So it'll be like she's birthing her sibling, but she's raising it like her kid, which is nuts.
Yeah, that is absolutely wild, and like I don't know why would she want to do that in the first place, but that's really interesting. And like, first of all, my mind's kind of blown that like technology can even do that at this point. But that is definitely super interesting, and like thinking about the genetics of that is interesting too, because um pretty unrelated, but there's two twins that got married, like two boy twins, two girl twins got
Yeah.
married. And so like technically, because they're identical twins, technically the kids that they have together have like the exact same DNA or something. which
Mm.
again, this isn't necessarily related to
Oh,
what
I've
we're
heard of
talking about,
something
but
like
just
that. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking
right,
about too.
very interesting. But anyways, let's get back to talking about like what these companies can do and like whether we're on board with what they're doing and the stage they're at. So, like you said, a lot of these companies are very early stage research and development, running trials, because I mean, obviously, this is changing people's genes and stuff. So we don't want to just do it all willy nilly. So we're still at a very early stage in all of this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we are at a very early stage. Like we said earlier, a lot of these companies are still in the research stage because there's so many things that need to get passed. I will make the argument that there's some things we already have some forms of gene editing with fertility treatments and things like that. But obviously, they're doing research to be able to do way more with the gene editing. So, for example, we mentioned CRISPR. So
Hmm.
CRISPR, I'm looking at their stock price right now, and as far as their stock price, I think when they first came on in like 2016, I believe they were in the teens, like 16 or 18 bucks a share. In 2021, they got up to like 165 bucks a share, and now they're back down to like 49 bucks. And a
Right.
lot of that, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it too, because I feel like a lot of that is just speculating when the research would take off, when they would get certain approvals. But obviously, it's a company that if you believe in it, this is still a this is still a time where you can kind of buy low, whether in the research phase, and if they do get all these approvals, it could really take off.
Yeah, for sure. So like, yeah, what you described about the stock price is pretty much accurate in that, a few years ago, there was a lot of hype, and I think that's when they first came out with this sickle cell drug or therapy, and like it's hype. They didn't have sales; it's still in testing, all this stuff. But people are like, "Oh, this is happening." Gene editing is a real thing, so the stock price skyrockets. But then obviously the market cools down. It went up to $220 a share. The market cools down and is like, okay, it's going to take some time for this to play out, and it goes back down to 40 or $50 a share. Um, what I do know, I've been following CRISPR for a few years, is that like this is a real thing. This isn't like some pipe dream. Like they are actually able to, edit people's genes and change people, at least in regards to sickle cell or whatever they're working on. So I guess I don't know how like convicted I am in the company or the stock, but like the industry or the area definitely is in 10, 20 years. I definitely think we'll see a legitimate gene editing industry.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that industry already has started to some degree, but it's just it's not as widespread, and some of the stuff is good. CRISPR is helping with sickle cell. Like there's people that die from sickle cell. Some of these companies are helping with life threatening diseases, cancers, all type of things, like helping so that when babies are born they don't have certain things, and also for adults that were just from natural births, they're helping them to be able to remove just different things that could harm them. So all of that stuff is all good and great, and is that's kind of the trade off, because you get that where you can get rid of some bad stuff, but also you open the box
Right,
for like when does it stop? Because
right.
it's
I
almost
think
like
that's
plastic surgery in a
yeah,
sense.
yeah. That's a good comparison maybe, because like you know it's one thing to put on a little makeup or something, but it's something else to completely change your entire appearance. And like
Yeah.
I'm reading through what some of these companies do, and this one company makes like pretty much can edit your genes so that you're less likely to reject a kidney transplant or whatever, which like I'm 100% on board with that. But like you're saying, we can see this being a slippery slope where it's like, and you and I have talked about this before, where you know you said your wife might be pregnant, congratulations, but like
Thank you.
you might be like, oh, I want the next LeBron James, so I'm gonna edit him to have be super hyper athletic and be tall and all this stuff, which I think can be a very slippery slope. We're not there yet, but like I think if we continue down this path we could get there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if some people were already doing this, because I've met couples specifically. I've met like lesbian couples or gay couples who obviously aren't able to have a kid naturally, and they've told me about their journey when they're having their kid, and some of the things they can already choose, like when
Really?
they're picking donors, like even just picking certain spot, like they're like, oh, I want my kid to be this tall, they
Yeah.
can match you with certain sperm donors to help you,
Yeah.
I guess, give you better odds to make that happen. Or if you want your kid to have certain traits, it's different things they can already do. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's the super rich is already doing some of this stuff that we don't even know about yet.
So in a sense, like this is gonna be controversial, but in let me look this up before I say, but there's a country that has practically no Down syndrome. It might be Iceland. Um, but they kind of already do this selection of DNA. Yeah, it's Iceland. But where they pretty much, if your child in the womb is diagnosed with Down syndrome, you have an abortion, and they practically have no Down syndrome in their society, which is like very controversial, obvious for a lot of
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's kind of the same concept of we identified this defect in DNA, so we're going to take this action, right? And I think that's what it could be in the future is we identified this thing in your child in the womb, so we're going to do these things to either fix it or whatever the case is. um and we can have a whole conversation on whether uh it makes like whether Down syndrome inherently is a bad thing, because a lot of people who have Down syndrome actually live happy lives because they're not really worried about things that the rest of us are worried
I
about.
agree,
But
100%.
we could have a whole conversation there, so I'll let you speak.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's a it's 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 just tough to make a decision because it's like I don't know, you're still interfering with the natural state of things, and I've seen enough Back to the Future and other movies where
Right.
obviously it's not gene editing, but when you interfere with the natural state of things, it
Right.
has consequences. And I'm just curious, like, what consequences are some of the things that this gene editing in our food, with animals and with humans, like, what effects is that going to have, 50, 100
Yeah.
years from now?
Yeah,
Will we
100%.
feel that? Will our kids feel that? And we be looking back and like, wow, look what
Yeah.
we've
So
created.
like like chickens today, we chi- breeded and edited chickens so that they have really large chicken breasts so that like we can get bigger chicken breasts, obviously. And
Yeah.
like it's to the point where some of these chickens can't even walk correctly because their chicken breasts are so big. And it's just like we clearly that is the ultimate, we have just taken nature and just perverted it. And it's just like one, be, like because that chicken's living an unhealthy, unnatural life somewhere down, maybe not directly, but somewhere that has to trickle down into the fact that we're eating that chicken. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if that chicken spends all of its life in a cage and it has these weird abnormal breasts and it can't walk right and whatever, like we're not eating a normal chicken, we're eating some completely different than intended chicken. And you're saying, who knows what the effect of that is going to be on us 2,000 years from now or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think about that with our food all the time. That
Yeah.
how much we mess around with it, how that can affect us, and I think we also it also should be said that like we're talking about these companies that are have these gene editing research and these products that they're actually going in and editing the genes, but you don't actually science isn't the only way that you can edit genes, and here's where I'm going with that is um you can we also as human beings, and when we have kids, a lot of what we pass down is based on our experiences, what we see, how we interact. For example, a long time ago, people were going out killing their food themselves, and the kids had natural, like their bodies were more built for that, and the way their genes were set up were more built for that. But when your environment changes, that can also change the genes as well. And so think about some of the content we're taking in, our relationship with social media, some of the things that how we're experiencing life. All of that could be
Yeah.
planned and could be a reason. Not I'm not trying to get too far out there, but I guess my point is just that you can have gene editing in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways.
And I mean, you're kind of talking nature versus nurture. And like, we've been talking for a little bit now, so we should wrap up soon. But I think what's really interesting that we haven't really talked about is there's all this gene editing and whatever, but like there's a lot of genes you have or that I have that may never come up in your life because you just haven't been in a situation where that gene comes up or it's expressed or whatever. But
Yeah.
like then you could be in a completely different situation or have a completely different life where that gene does matter or that gene does impact your life or whatever. So I think it's not just, hey, you had this biology, you had this DNA, and that decides who you are, but it's of course nature and nurture. It's you had this DNA, you had this biology, and you had this environment that you lived in. That's really going to form who you are, and all of that. But yeah,
Yeah, and
all
I just
being said,
wonder if like that'll become an industry in itself too. Like that'll be a form of gene editing where I mean that's already I mean this is a separate episode, but like people purposely controlling the content and the type of environment people are in to create a next generation of a certain type of humans to benefit certain people.
I think we already do that, but I mean that's a different
Yeah,
conversation
that's
altogether.
that's a whole
We
different
definitely
box.
do have areas like that though, but okay.
Yeah, but anyway, like you said, we definitely need to jump into off topic. So I think to close it out though, before we do that, I think with kind of final thoughts, going back to just on a strictly stock basis, how do you feel about these industries from a stock point of view as far
Yeah.
as good stock, bad stock? Do you think there's potential here as an investor to invest in some of these companies like CRISPR and Verve?
So, like we kind of discussed, they're all early stage. It's not like Apple making profit or anything. So it's all about the technology and whether the technology will play out. And I do think the technology is going to continue progressing and play out. But we're on this website with the top 10 publicly owned gene editing companies. Like, who knows which of those is going to be successful or whose research is going to be better or whatever. I do think the industry is for sure going to exist in 10 years and be a real thing, but who knows which company. Right now CRISPR is kind of leading, but who knows which company really wins it all.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's I feel like that always happens when it's a new industry. You don't know who's gonna drop and who's gonna end up being at the top of the race. But I think that I don't think it's going anywhere. I think that it's something that, from an investment standpoint, you might have to be patient with it as far as when
Right.
you get in because you don't really know when everything's gonna get approved. But I do think
Yeah.
that it will be worth it if you have longevity and you have time to be patient. It'll
I,
pay off
I
in the
think
long run.
it's similar to like pharmaceuticals, where pharmaceutical companies are very similar, where they're developing drugs, they have to get them approved by the FDA, this, that, and the other, and it's a risk that they don't get it approved or that the research fails or whatever. So it's definitely a huge risk, but obviously that risk could pay off. And also, I said I don't know who's going to win. I don't think there's going to be a single winner because there's so many applications. But you don't know whose product is gonna work is more what I meant. But
Yeah,
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 I
absolutely.
think that's really it for this topic.
Yeah, cool. Let's jump into off topic. So, boy, I'm gonna pass it to you for the random number generator to see what we're talking about today.
Uh, Today it'll be either are we having enough kids to sustain society? Education should
Mm.
be free and equal. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And has GPS ruined our sense of direction? I like education should be free and equal. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that GPS one too for a phone
Okay.
one, but yeah, let's do the education one. Let's do the education.
I could also see something I would have to say for the GPS one, but it's up to you.
Yeah,
Education.
yeah, we could do education because
Okay.
which
Um,
I think we're in agreement with that probably.
Probably, but we should still have the discussion of why
Yeah,
it probably should be free and equal. So here's the
yeah.
thing. I don't know if all education should be free and equal. Like, obviously, the basic education through high school should be free and equal. And then also, I think like a university education should be free and equal, but I don't know if it should be free to go study, underwater basket weaving or whatever it is.
I kind of feel like I'm not even saying that education should necessarily even be free. I definitely think, like you said, it should be free from K through 12 for sure. And then once you get to college, I think it should just be, even if it's not free. Free would be great, but if it's not free, it should definitely be affordable, like
affordable.
like cheap. Let's say that I think education should be cheap after high school, no matter what you're studying. Because my thing is like that's only good for that's only good for society. If you're studying something at an
Right.
accredited university and you're learning a new skill, like how is that that
You're going to be a productive person in
that's only gonna
society.
benefit us.
Right. But like the issue is that like I think the incentives are currently aligned because right now, so quick history of why college is so expensive is didn't used to be this expensive until the government started subsidizing student loans. And now because there's someone who's willing to pay for it, and these 18-year-old kids don't realize that they're taking out these loans, the universities keep increasing their prices and everything. And the universities don't necessarily need money. Like a bunch of them have billions and billions of dollars in endowments, but they can charge more and someone's going to pay it, whether it's a loan provider or whoever. So I don't know where I was going with that, but that's why it's not free.
And most of these universities are they nonprofit?
That's a good question. But like, yeah, most of them aren't for-profit schools, like trying to, they're not businesses, you know?
Yeah, so like I always wondered that like where does like I know obviously these big universities like just to name some big ones, LSU, Duke, North Carolina, like the big like blue blood universities that pretty much every state has at least one. Um they make a ton of money, but I always wonder like where does this money actually go? Because it's not like they have shareholders and stuff like that.
Right.
They're paying their staff, they're paying the people who are running the school, and they're getting these obviously these crazy facilities. But then where's the profit going though? Because somebody's getting
Bro, it's
it.
accumulating in their endowment. They just every year Harvard or whoever gets another $1 billion in their endowment because they have that money invested in the market or whatever. And they just are these schools are getting richer and richer. Like
But then
it's
who's actually taking like getting the money
but then
from the
then they
endowment?
then they have things like, oh, we use 1% of our endowment for scholarships and we use, we spend this amount on facilities or whatever. But like you're right, it's just accumulating and no one's getting this money. It's just Harvard now has, hold on, let me see how
But I
much.
think people are getting the money. That's my point. I think people are getting the money, but they don't talk about it because they have these endowments, and for them to
Okay.
want because they my thing is just like I don't feel like they would be this incentivized to continue to make all these big profits and build these crazy facilities for the sports team and all of this if people weren't actually pocketing some of these
I'm sure
profits.
someone is getting paid well, but I don't think anyone has like the right to Harvard's endowment, Like so I'm looking here, Harvard's endowment grew by 12% from 53 billion to 56 billion last year, which by the way is more than enough money to let all of their students go to the school for free, but that's besides the point. Like they're just gonna in 10 years they're gonna have 100 billion. Like it's just gonna keep growing. Harvard's just gonna keep getting richer. Like you're right that someone is probably profiting off of this in some way, but like
Well, you know what? How they probably do it is it's probably through relationships with other companies because they're able to use the endowment, like you said. Some of it goes to scholarships, but some of it also goes to the city that they're in. It goes to these local businesses. It goes to some of these boosters that are supporting them when they need wink winks and under the table handshakes,
mm,
and that's probably what it is. It's the network that they're building. The money helps flow thing, so it doesn't have to be a clean exchange of money, but it's money happening from other areas because of the relationship.
and I mean I think what like money really equates to power and like so Harvard or whoever whatever school has a lot of power in their endowment. So even though the head of Harvard might not be able to spend that money exactly like he has the influence and the power that comes with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and the whole reason we kind of went down that road is because
Right.
the whole point that I'm trying to make is that that's the reason why school isn't free
Right.
because there's money in it, but it should be
Right.
because I think the reason why it's not free is because there's quicker money in it being us charging for it. There's people that have built lives off of it, people that have built
Yeah.
companies off of it, and
Right.
families that have been getting rich off of it for generations. But if everybody was open to it being free or at least cheap, then it would actually benefit society more because we would have more highly intelligent people people with more job skills, and it would just make things a lot easier to do.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the biggest problems in society right now. I think is that I take back what I said originally, where like, oh, underwater basket weaving shouldn't be free. Like I do think actually you should be able to learn about whatever you want to learn about. I mean, we do kind of have Wikipedia, which is kind of that right now, but in this university setting, like you should be able to learn about whatever interests you. And I think if people did that, like their minds would be more open. They'd be, more willing to accept new ideas and try new things and whatever. And we'd have a lot less of this hatred of other people because they're different or whatever. Like you just be a better rounded person.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure, it's really having skills and knowledge in different things is only going to
Right.
help people. And I mean, it's probably a whole nother episode on why we have it set up to where we don't want people to have access to the skill. Because honestly, everybody has certain skills that they're more aligned with or that they're just better at just naturally. So we should make it free for them to get access to whatever they're
Right.
passionate about and learn about it so that they can be the expert in it, and
Right.
we can kind of trade off skills. But obviously, our system is more set up for trading off capital than
Right.
skills. So that's a whole nother conversation.
And I think real quick, like what the system is also kind of set up for, even though it's not explicit, is like it's set up for you to get a degree that is going to go make money, right? Like
Yeah.
to get a degree that's practical, engineering, accounting, whatever. It's not set up for you to go get a degree in, like I said, underwater basket weaving and then just go out into the world and be an artist, right? Like,
Yeah.
even though that's, I think, might be a good thing to have people who just create art for, the fun of
Yeah,
it.
it
Like,
definitely is.
um, but it's set up for, hey, get a degree that is practical and you can pay back your student loans with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the system is totally messed up. Even with how we split up the money,
Hmm.
funding, all of it's crazy.
And
From
don't even bring up the NIL stuff now. Like that's completely changed how college works.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole nother
Yeah,
beast. But I mean we've ran on for a little bit, so for the sake of time, I think this is probably a good time to kind of wrap it up. But
for sure.
I think we kind of both on the same page with school should be free or at least cheap, but the system
Yeah,
just kind of out of control.
yeah, for sure.
um, so anyway, you wanna close us out, boy?
Yes, sir. That is all we have for you guys today. Thanks for joining, and remember,
This is all just for stocks and giggles.